Hey guys, howdy, I hope you are fine. As you seen in the thumbnail, in this video, we are gonna see, what if Naruto had Red Eyes Queen with Rhaenys the First Rex. You to check the author of this fanfic, and show some love and support. Name of the story is Rise of the Red Queen by Neon Zangetsu. To check it out. All details in description. And if you want next part of this series, please leave a like and comment 5 blue emoji. Let's get into the video. Also check out Patreon for I have upload Naruto X Daenerys Targaryen uncensored spicy version, link in description. Rhaenys snuck into the dragon pit in the dead of night. None of the guards witnessed her, nor did the keepers on patrol see her as she snuck into the great building holding the last dragons in the world. It wasn't hard, quite the contrary. Frightfully easy if anything. No one thought she would be here, and thus, there were none to stop her. Even as a girl of only 10 and 3 years old, she knew her way in and out of this place without fail, so it shouldn't have been a surprise for a princess such as herself to enter these hallowed tunnels while no one was about. Down she went into the depths without fear. Without hesitation, without any regret. She had a broad idea of where most of the other dragons were located. This was different from Dragonstones where older legends dwelt. There was Caraxes as well as Dreamfire, Seasmoke, Vermithor with Silverwing and of course, Balerion the Black Dread. That one, the princess knew well to avoid. She was brave, yes, but not suicidal. Old though he was, the dread would snap her up in a single bite. To blunder upon the wrong dragon in these tunnels may well mean her doom. But she was not afraid. Besides, tonight she sought another. Melis. The Red Queen they called her, for good bloody reason. Her rider, the Princess Alyssa Targaryen, had recently passed in childbirth, leaving brave, noble Melis to be chained down without a rider. She would release her from her chains and then, well, she would either find glory or death, depending on her mercurial mood or... Wait, what was that noise? Threading her way through the tunnels, quiet as a cat, she paused as her path branched out into an open chamber. There, she could see the telltale shape that she knew so well, and secretly admired besides. Sneaking towards the massive shape she sought, Rhaenys paused when she came across a rather peculiar sight she couldn't quite comprehend. You see, there was a boy there. He was pinned by a silently purring Miles, whose soft trills spoke of just how happy she was to have him under her. Which was strange as she could not recognize the boy as either a guard, a Targaryen, nor even one of the dragon keepers, and those were a old order from the days of the freeholds that moved to Essos around the time of the Doom. He was handsome enough in a boyish way she supposed, bearing striking blue eyes and unique marquee NGS on his face that typically associated him with a tribal heritage. Shame about his outfit though, it had seen better days, now it was a tattered black and orange mess that barely clung to his battered body. At a glance, she would say he was 10 and 5 years of age mayhaps, but his gaze seemed older, wiser, calmer somehow, as though he'd seen all this world had to offer and patiently endured it all. The boy turned to her as she opened the gate and chuckled nervously, a little help here. She hasn't let me up for the last 3 hours. Well, color her impressed. For one, he was alive. When dragons tended to stay away from people they perceived as either threats or ill-intended. Secondly, Miles was actually purring, which she never did for anyone till the hell, even the keepers had to be careful with her as she was just as likely to burn someone who came too close, except members of her family. Third, he wasn't showing even an iota of fear. Did he have balls of steel or something? Rhaenys blinked when she realized he was asking her to help him, but then remembered where he was and crossed her arms across her budding chest. Before I do anything I must know, who are you? Where did you come from? How did you get in here without the guards spotting you? Each question came one after the other, causing the blonde boy to wince. She was a princess, she had to have at least some decorum of responsibility if she were to inherit her grandfather's throne after all. He gave her a dull look. Well, I could ask you the same. She huffed and rolled her eyes. A gentleman should give their name first. He chuckled again, his eyes beaming brightly as his smile spread across his face. Fair enough, he said eagerly. In order, Naruto Uzumaki is the name. The earth opened up in the middle of a fight and dumped me just outside this place, and as for the last, nobody could find me because, in case you haven't noticed, I'm very much stuck under this dragon. Happy now? He beamed at her and let a question of his own hang before her. And you are. Rhaenys cleared her throat. I see, yes, that would explain some of what I am seeing, she said calmly before standing up straight and lifting her chin to address him. You have the honor of addressing the princess of the Seven Kingdoms and future heir to the Iron Throne, Rhaenys Targaryen, she answered him strongly. Naruto nodded whimsically, good name. He responded. She wasn't about to let him off with just that, she pointed a finger at the massive red dragon he was laying underneath, and another thing. That's my dragon. Melisy trilled once. Naruto balked with wide eyes, she is. He sounded awestruck, such was his exclamation. That's amazing. Rhaenys blushed, turning away slightly as she felt she needed to actually clarify, well. No, but I came to claim her, she rectified. The blonde boy pushed against Miles' head and grunted in effort when the Red Queen made no move to rise. Yay, well, good luck with that one. You're more than welcome to her if it means letting me up. He gave up and flopped back to the ground as the might beast groaned and continued to snuggle him some more. Try as she might, the young princess giggled despite herself. Should I come back at a later time, perhaps when she has finished entertaining you? Ack, he grunted as Miles plopped her head down on his stomach and chest, her tongue popping out to lick him across the face. Bad dragon, no licking. He strained to push her away. She seems to be quite attached to you, which is surprising. Rhaenys acknowledged. Oh yay, well, rather than stand there laughing. Get this lizard off of me. Naruto grunted, she's starting to get heavy and my back is hurting from her constantly trying to plop down on my body. Do you have an itch you can't scratch? Rhaenys tilted her head, mimicking her mother, or rather, how she'd once seen her act. I could reach it for you, but what would you do for me? I don't give a damn, tell. Bird brain over her, I ain't a pillow for her to lay her head down. His voice peaked in desperation, please. I'd really rather not hurt her. As if he could wound a dragon. An impish grin tugged at the corner of her mouth. I could keep you here. You'd be my prisoner. A blonde brow rose, please don't. He stated desperately, clearly he didn't much fancy being a dragon's toy. That settled it. She liked this one. Do you have a calling? He blinked in confusion as he stopped trying to fight and getting her dragon off his chest. A what now? Rhaenys rolled her eyes, a profession. Oh. He grinned excitedly, yay. I have a profession, but, he looked at her cautiously, what do I get for telling you? He questioned. Do you want the dragon off of you or not? She put both hands on her hips. Geez. You're worse than Pervy Sage or Granny Tsunade, he muttered. Granny who? She ignored the names and raised a brow. Well, tell me, what is your profession? She asked him. Fine, I'm a ninja Yano. He flung up his arms with an exasperated shout. Now will you get this damn thing off me already? Rhaenys could have sworn to her dying days, if this Naruto's feet were able, he'd be kicking them like a man would do to get the little horny dogs of one's legs. She gave a little giggle and relented. Very well, but you must tell me more of these ninja you speak of. Yay, sure, whatever you want, he agreed. My legs are going numb here. Miles, off. Rhaenys commanded in her mother tongue. With a sullen complaint, the massive drake rose up off the boy, moved a single pass to the east, and promptly laid back down. Rhaenys watched her move, admiring the majesty of her. A shame, it would have been a great time to claim her as her mount. Oh well, she could always return later for her. She could. But she was young and impatient and did not wish to wait. She held a hand out to Naruto as the massive she-dragon grunted and snorted at the boy backing away from her. Only for her gaze to follow him as she skid across the stone basin of the floor like a dog seeking attention. Turning to the young girl, he took her hand and smirked as she hoisted him to his feet. Thanks. I thought I was gonna be pinned under her until tomorrow, he said happily. Yay, sure, but next time, try and stay away from the doors unless you wish to become a snack for the dragons, she said looking at him with crossed arms. Yay, sure, I'll keep it in mind, he nodded. His stomach growled and pity stirred in her heart. She was not so crass to ignore a clearly hungry peasant standing before her. Come, I will have the maids inside the keep cook you a meal. I still wish to hear more about these ninja you spoke of before, she said pointedly. Melis made an irritated noise akin to a growl, demanding attention. Yes, she dared to touch the dragon's snout. We'll feed you, too. It's not fair for you to remain down here in the dark so soon after losing your rider. You must be losing your mind down here. Said growl tapered off into a low trill as she stroked her snout, almost as though the dragon understood her and was grateful for the apology. No, surely not. Such was impossible. Dragons, no matter how fantastical, were not human. Clever, yes, quick and cruel and capricious, prone to just as many emotions as a human, but they could never be human. No matter how much they might wish to. No reason to treat them with disrespect, however. Fixing the red dragon in her sights, she raised a hand and spoke slowly in High Valyrian. Will you obey me, old girl? Melis raised her head from unbridled neck, spines arching. Rhaenys dared to scoot closer, and laid her head upon the dragon's muzzle. Melis let her. She supposed that was a better start than most. The Red Queen could have eaten her outright. Her heart hitched a little. Was this it, then? Had she been accepted? Melis laid her neck on the ground, allowing Rhaenys to glimpse the saddle atop her back. Her heart hitched, and for a moment, just a moment, she found herself unable to speak. Did that boy have something to do with this? Was he the reason Melis was so calm, why she had so readily accepted her? She hardly knew. But she wasn't about to look a gift dragon in the mouth here, no siree. How she ached to go flying with her right now. Man, you sure don't beat around the bush, do you? Naruto questioned behind her. She must like you. Indeed, skirting around information is a surefire way to end up dead, she responded, drawing back and resolving to take her first flight at another night. Come, let us get you something to eat. Whiling in a swirl of silk, she began to walk away. Naruto followed behind her, heading towards the doors, only to pause when he caught sight of a massive dragon of ebony and red scales further back in the dragon pit. Holy! He balked, looked at the massive black dragon slumbering on the ground, awe in his eyes. Well, what's his story? That would be Balerion, Rhaenys stated as she gazed at the massive black dragon. Balerion. He said the name again, tasting it aloud. That's a neat name. It should be. He is the eldest dragon in the entire world. Merely saying it filled her with pride, lending her an echo of Aegon the Conqueror's glory. The last creature to ever see Valyria before it was destroyed. Don't suppose he'd be willing to let me ride him. He grinned at her. PFF'd. He's likely to eat you rather than let you ride him. Rhaenys crossed her arms. It's your funeral. Naruto laid a marked hand upon the massive dragon's snout and squinted at it for a long, ponderous moment. Balerion huffed once, creaked a massive eye open, then returned to his slumber. How long has he been sick? Naruto questioned. Rhaenys scoffed. Sick? Dragons can't get sick, silly. Rather than be rebuffed, the stranger seemed sadly amused by that. Everyone gets sick sooner or later. It's our body's way of telling us to take better care of ourselves. I still don't think he's sick. Really? He said as he looked at her and watched her nod. Well, I mean, if that were true, then he would have stirred when we came near him, right? Rhaenys snorted. And how would you know that? She demanded. I grew up around animals, and older animals usually perk up and act excitable or eager to be around people when they reach their elder years. He saw it all these things as though they were common knowledge, that which everyone should know. Cats and dogs are prime examples of this. When they are getting ready to die, so they begin playing and drawing attention to themselves when they're getting ready to leave their masters, you know. It's an animal's instinct to mark their masters with their sense as much as possible, to make them happier and uch before they die so as to allow them to leave peacefully. Craning his neck back, he looked to Balerion. He's got an old illness, probably from a scar or something, he said softly. Rhaenyra felt her eyes widen at the revelations. She needed to get this boy to grandfather now. Come, now, we head to the Red Keep, she said as she grabbed his hand and began to drag him to his feet, heedless of the protest Melis made. This way. Grandfather would want to hear this news. No, he must hear of this. What's the Red Keep? The boy asked suddenly, startling her. It's the central location for all political power in Westeros. It's the seat of power for King's Landing, she told him urgently. Sure you know of this? Naruto shook his head in confusion. Red Keep. King's Landing, he questioned. One before they exited the massive dome, causing him to blink. I'm a long way from home, aren't I? Rhaenys tilted her head. She had no way of knowing, naturally, of how the future had just changed. With this innocent encounter, the queen who never was, would one day become the Red Queen. Much like the very dragon she'd come to claim. And today, She'd just met the man she'd marry, though neither of them knew it at the time. Looking back, she would laugh at the irony. 0.0.0. Jaehaerys knew what it was to speak softly and carry a big stick. The old king, they called him these days, Jaehaerys the Conciliator. The fourth Targaryen king and the longest reigning king in the Seven Kingdoms history. He who rode the bronze dragon Vermithor, the man who became king at the age 10 and 4. Sin. Ce the death of Maegor in his tenure as king, he had faced many foes, many trials and many tribulations. He had conquered them all. But there was none so vexing as his granddaughter. Many mourned the death of Princess Alyssa, but not she. He had an inkling, he knew where his granddaughter had been last night, and it was nowhere good. There would be much chaos to come, he knew, to say nothing of the sea. Omplains his sons would surely field once they realized where the realm's last living princess was lurking. As though summoned by that very thought, the doors to his chamber swept open as one. The FAINT chimes of bell-like laughter that followed would be his one and only warning. He nearly groaned anyway. Speak of the little terror and she shall appear. Grandfather, grandfather. Princess Rhaenys chirruped happily, drawing a boy with golden hair and blue eyes into the room by the arm. We must speak. Look who I found in the dragon pit. Her guest dimpled and offered a weak wave with a selfsame smile besides. Hello, there. Jaehaerys arched a pale brow. And who are you? A.N. The proud Lord Saaaiid. Ahem, sorry, couldn't help myself. Worry not, we haven't forgotten Curlis. He too has a part to play in the story. Though we won't say what exactly whom just yet. Wouldn't do to spoil things. Hope this little tidbit of a teaser made you smile. Would you like weekly updates? As ever, reviews are the fuel that sustain me. Without them I cannot write a single word. Simple as that. Working nearly all hours of the day keep me absurdly busy. As such, I can't bring myself to write something folks don't like. On there we go. As ever, reviews keep me alive. Without them, I cannot write. So, in the immortal words of Atlas, review, would you kindly? Hope you enjoyed this, and may your day be filled with lots of luck. Warm regards. Tilda ends. Spoilers. 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 Plot details ahoy. Ye be warned. Read at your own risk. As ever, these are from the far-flung future, or are they tilde? Previews are mostly the same, wouldn't want to spoil things now. Previews. You can use magic. Rhaenys asked with wide eyes. I mean, yay, you never asked. Naruto responded. What else can you do? She questioned excitedly. I mean, I can do all kinds of things. I hadn't perfected a lot of things, but I learned as much as I could before I found myself here, he said honestly. What? You want a piece of me? Naruto called out as Caraxes hissed at him, his maw filling with flame. The hissing got fiercer, and with a roar, both struck one another, but only one succeeded. Carax's head shot back and up as Naruto snapped his fist into the Crimson Dragon's lower jaw. What? You think I'm afraid of you, a lizard with wings? I ain't scared of nothing. The blonde growled. So, let me see if I got this straight. You want me to use a hammer? Yay, I mean you told me that you can use lightning, air, and water right, I'd figured you like it. Rhaenys pointed out. Be that as it may, that is a terrible joke. But I'll see what it can do. Mjolnir, it was named Mjolnir. Rhaenys smiled at him. Mjolnir, I like it. He said smiling, you know what, it suits it. Jaehaerys the wise king, generally wasn't one to find humor in tall tales or fantasy. In fact, he was more often than not one to consider such fables the tales of the gods themselves. So, when his granddaughter came rushing into the throne room with a boy who was barely older than her, he grew concerned. A boy, a male, the opposite gender, with his little rascal of a granddaughter. Was the world of Westeros coming to an end? Aemon was going to have a conniption when he learned about this. He inhaled deeply before he rubbed the bridge of his nose. So, you claim to have fallen from the sky. Yup, the blonde answered. His face saying it all, he'd show them if they wanted proof. All while fighting your best friend in a fight to the death. Naruto cringed. Something like that. He looked uneasy about that one. He ignored the interruptions, and then when you first looked around, you spotted Miles, and instead of running like you should have. Naruto chuckled as he grew embarrassed. Yay, not my smartest move that. he said with red cheeks. The king grunted. This brat was really testing him, wasn't he? Where you somehow found yourself being pinned underneath her head so as to, what, pet her or? No, nothing like that. I could barely turn around before she swiped me feet out with her tail, and waited for me to turn around where she then pinned me down. The king Ned when he felt a gentle hand place itself upon his arm. Husband, we both know Miles doesn't take to just anyone. His wife, Queen Alysanne Targaryen, said with a knowing look that said she knew shish. He was right, and even he knew he couldn't argue against it. She is more likely to burn something she did like than to act a dog wanting attention. So, even with the disbelief in young Rhaenys and this young boy's testimony, the fact remains, he was in the pit with Miles, and he survived being around her. She pointed out, and you can also smell Miles' scent upon the both of them, she added when her husband went to speak. The most we can do now is listen to the rest. Jaehaerys wanted to scowl, he truly did, but even with all the facts and proof before him, he also knew she was right. Well then, the fact facing us still remains that the young man Naruto, had managed to get inside the most dangerous place in all the world and walk away unharmed, he stated. I mean, I did get numb legs from being pinned. But, he couldn't argue when the elderly man turned to look at him. Well, the large black one, he's also ill as we stated beforehand. I could heal him, if y'all like. Silence fell over the room. Balerion is 200 years old young man, the most that would be wrong with him is he is getting too old to continue living. The queen said looking at Naruto with a curious look, so. Please explain how he is sick when it has never been recorded for a dragon to have fallen ill. Well, like I told Rhaenyra before she dragged me here without even explaining what was going on. It most likely came from an old wound from his younger years. He explained, I barely even said as such to her before I found myself being dragged here before the both of you. Jaehaerys was slightly disbelieving. He wanted fact and proof over tales and stories woven by children. Even if you were capable of doing such, what would you gain out of such service to the crown? Nothing. Naruto stated instantly. I don't need a reason or cause to wanna help someone or something that could be fixed with kindness. Before Jaehaerys could speak up, his wife beat him to it, causing him to huff. She always was like this even when they were younger and was summarily smacked on the arm by her in response. Would you be willing to make such claims if you were incapable of doing so? She asked, eyes narrow. No. He shook his head. If I couldn't do something, I would find a way to achieve what I wanted. All I am able to do now is because I worked myself to the bone to learn or achieve. I was the only sage left in my home, the most powerful warrior which even brought the heavens to heel in the middle of a war. I faced the wrath of a planet in the form of a living cataclysm. I fought and held on my own a fight against a goddess with the ability to shift various planes and realities with a thought and reduce a person to ash with a scratch. On the day of my birth, my father summoned the very embodiment of death itself to seal a portion of the very cataclysm I fought into me an hour after my birth before he succumbed to his own wounds. I have fought for recognite ion and power when all others ignored or ridiculed me. I went through the experience of being orphaned at birth and was left straddled with a tailed beast that I possibly couldn't hope to control, no bloodlines to speak of and with no mentor to help me become worthy and powerful. I didn't lie down and simply accept the fate I was dealt at birth. I lashed out, violently. I alone made friends who wanted to see me. Despite my heritage and means. I alone found mentors, and showed them worth. I earned power, instead of having it showered upon me from a young age. I brought myself into the fight against all odds with an explosion. And ripped through it with impunity, he stated pointedly. I alone turned myself into a warrior that defied the basic laws of the game the so-called gods deemed to play. I made everyone I knew understand my value and want to see me improve for the future in which I would be required to use anything and everything to fight against those who would see my home burn. I was the very subject of a prophecy that would have me be the savior or destroyer of all I knew and loved, and when I ascended to levels of power beyond most mortal comprehension, I chose to give all that up to live as a normal man before being dragged into a fight I wanted no part of before I ended up here. All that I am, I became because others came to know me for who I was, not what I was capable of doing. He finished honestly. Jaehaerys looked to his wife and then to Rhaenys, who looked like she almost wanted to pounce on him and demand proof, and cleared his throat. Very well, show Is that you can help Balerion and we might just heed your claims. He stood up and descended towards the floor. Alisan, be a dear and fetch whatever supplies the boy will need to help Balerion in his recovery. That won't be necessary. Naruto simply pulled off the black glove on his hand to reveal an intriguing mark that was both white and circular in the middle of his palm. All I need to do is touch where he was originally hurt and I should be able to heal him to his former strength. Both Jaehaerys and Alisan felt perplexed. Such a bold claim. Rhaenys said in surprise, are you sure you didn't bump your head before? She asked him grinning. As sure as the big smelly beast that thought of me as a pillow, he said blankly. Then let us proceed to the pit, and show us proof of your claims. 0.0.0.0. His wound ached. Balerion was old, but he still had life left in him. But what was the point? Old Valyria had taken all his kin from him in the day of ruin. Vagar alone remained. He was the last, the sole remnant of, ... What just landed on his face? Something, no someone, slowly forced his right eye open. Dimly he became aware of a fire taking shape before him, but, it smelled of Aegon, his friend. His master. Ah, geez. You've had a rough time of things, haven't you? A soft voice said softly. Here we are, another voice spoke, now heal him if you can. Ah, Maegor's nephew. He could smell his offspring upon him from here. Jaehaerys. The bronze hatchling's master. Balerion closed his eye with a grunt, content to dwell in darkness. His visitors didn't much like that. We need to expose the wound first, can't heal him otherwise. So, you need him to stand up. The king questioned. Yay, he's big, but I haven't seen any signs of scars on his upper body, the child of fire said. Rise, Balerion. The command came with explicit strength. The pain. He didn't wanna. Stand up, Balerion. The command came, causing him to groan in pain, up as he was told. There, the child said, pointing at his abdomen. Balerion growled at him, he knew not his intentions, but he wouldn't let him act as if he were some horse to be pet. What in the flame's name? Unbeknownst to him, Naruto had leapt up and clung to his scales via chakra. The energy resonated deep inside of the Black Dread, causing some of his own power, his withering magic, to respond. With a shuddering groan that seemed to rattle the very world, the massive worm perked up, feeling 30 years younger. Then, something changed. A pulse of life came from the whelp. Balerion earned his head with a grunt and deigned to open his eyes again, watching this time as the boy's entire arm glowed with gold. Then, he struck, his hand entering his scales, yet not drawing blood. Pain. Balerion drew his head back with a roar of surprise. The whelp cried out. The hand that was not inside his body reached out and grabbed a massive plate that was a scale. The Black Dread wasn't idle, his body surged forth. The cries and exclamation of those beneath him as they raced to get away. Exiting the pit, Balerion began to run, physically run where his wings unfurled and beat down against He whirled with eagerness and energy not seen from the old dragon in nearly 50 years. The whelp's energy was still coursing through him as he drank greedily, taking all he could, ignoring the cries of the human clinging to him as his youth was being restored to its pinnacle power. He drew his head back and roared. The cry rattled the whole of King's Landing below, but it was what came next that cemented the proof. A mixture of red-black fire burst forth and ignited the heavens and soared out in a pillar of death and destruction. He circled the massive castle that his rider Maegor had built up, his wings clapping like thunder. The cries of the people within and around drawing all sorts of looks, and still he drank of the power coursing through him, taking all he could and more from the whelp who healed him. Balerion couldn't understand that the healing had already been completed, that the fire worms that dwelling inside his body 30 years ago had all been killed off, his energy and power restored. And his greedy inhalation of the power coursing through him was just as dangerous if not mitigated and controlled. Luckily, Naruto was controlling the flow of said chakra, ensuring that the Drake didn't explode from the sheer amount of energy he was consuming from him. Naruto held an entire universe's, if not more, in his body, and this lizard was just drinking more and more and more as if though had been dehydrated beyond measure. He couldn't pull his arm out as the Drake was keeping the link between them open, but he was determined to break it. Sticking with chakra, the massive dragon wheeling about in the skies with a roar that rattled the city, He drew his other arm back and silently apologized as he channeled that same energy into his free hand and smashed it into the drake's chest, causing it to cry out and fall from the sky. This not only broke the connection between them, but also caused them to flip through the air. Luckily, in this stress, they managed to crash down into the waters of the Blackwater Bay, the tidal wave caused by Balerian's crash nearly reaching the mud gate from sheer size. Naruto surfaced first, sputtering and spitting water. Damn lizard, was he trying to kill himself? Exclamation mark quote. He asked, only to cry out when the answer was an emphatic no, for Balerian shot out of the water like the great leviathans of old. Half of his brutish bulk broke out in a single surge, his wings following seconds after, washing Naruto away as the drake roared and leapt free from the waters, flying away. He might have a bit of excess energy at the moment. Maybe a bit hyper on the grand scheme of things. But he'd live for sure now. He coughed again, expelling some seawater he'd inadvertently swallowed from that damn lizard leaping out of the bay. Dragging himself out of the water, he shook his head and looked around, but from the darkness of the sky, he couldn't find that damned lizard Ba. If he was able to fly around like a damn hyperactive puppy, he'd be fine. You never do things by halves, do you? Very funny, Kurama. He thumped his head, wincing as some water leaked from his ear. Gah, I'm gonna be waterlogged for days. Thankfully, he was drawn out of his thoughts when the sound of flapping wings filled the air, causing him to turn and watch as two dragons landed on the shore. One was bronze as a copper coin, the other a dazzling dark shade he couldn't quite make out in the darkness, but the people on them he recognized, as the king and queen and even Rhaenys, who had jumped off the bronze dragon to rush at him. He waved at them. Hey, you guys alright? Us. Jaehaerys nearly guffawed. We should be asking you the same. I have never seen Balerian act in such a manner before. How did you accomplish such a feat? Honestly, was probably the best policy here. Strange as the explanation might sound, he had these, I dunno, slimy worm things inside him. He gestured expansively for good measure. I purged them from his body, healing the damage done to him from the consummation of his body. He'd probably live a few more years and die, but now he'll live a lot longer now. Worms, you mean like a parasite? Rhaenys asked. If worms could breathe fire, then sure, I guess. Naruto shrugged. Fire worms, from old Valyria, Alicent stated as she looked to her husband, who nodded his head in agreement. Well, what now? Rhaenys asked. He's proven he can heal. Wait. She trailed off, eyes widening. He did it with a touch. He did it with a touch. Jaehaerys snorted as Alicent hummed with wry amusement. We noticed, dear grand dogther. Rhaenys rounded on Naruto with a gleam in her eyes that rather put the poor blonde on edge. If he were entirely honest with himself, what came next absolutely floored him. The princess closed the distance between them in an instant and almost seemed to appear in front of him in the blink of an eye. Her hands closed around his and held up their interlocked fingers just below her chin, clinging tight. You can use magic. Gulp. I mean, if by magic you meant my chakra, then yeah, you never asked. Naruto responded. What else can you do? She questioned excitedly. I mean, I can do all kinds of things. He would have gestured with his hands, but she was holding so darn tight that he couldn't bear the idea of tearing them from her grip. I hadn't perfected a lot of things, but I learned as much as I could before I found myself here. Teach me. Naruto nearly crashed face-first into the floor. Teach you. She hopped up and down in place, adorable, grinning from ear to ear. Did I stutter? Teach me your ways, mage. Oi, now. Calm yourself, Rhaenys, Queen Alicent crooned softly. I am sure young Naruto will be more than willing to speak of his capacity for magic on the morrow. Yay, I ain't gonna lie, that damn lizard took more from me than I had wanted him to. Naruto said, scratching the back of his neck. You hit the Black Dread with enough force to knock him from the skies. I would say it were an even trade. Jaehaerys snorted. He was actually kinda amused by that. I mean, I didn't want him to die from taking too much. Naruto responded. Which, we can, again, talk more about tomorrow. Alicent stated, more firm than before, leaving no room for debate in her decision. To bed with you, Rhaenys. That sounds like a grand idea, my dear. Jaehaerys agreed. He was not sleeping in a different room on his own tonight, thank you very much. Wah, but. Rhaenys went to try and protest, but a look from both her elders quelled her wants and desires to know more. Ah. 0.0.0. Bed. Normally entailed going to sleep. Instead his own thoughts tormented him. The massive black dragon he'd healed had flown off and hadn't been seen, also because it was dark out since as he was not in the massive building where Naruto had first saw him. The old man was kind enough to personally lead him to a room for him to rest in, but he had the stipulation of a couple guards standing outside the door to ensure he didn't go or do anything to the rest of his family. And yet sleep eluded him. He lay there instead, unable to find comfort. Hours ticked by before he finally found sleep. When dawn broke, he was unable to ignore the light of the sun shining in his face. So he made the hard decision to actually wake up rather than rest a little longer. Crawling out of the bed, Naruto stretched and cracked his bones to rid them of the stiffness, be it in his shoulders or back. He cared not, it just felt nice. Deciding to greet the day and see if he was able to talk to the old man about what was gonna happen next, he dressed himself and left the room, asking for a simple set of directions to the throne room to speak with Jaehaerys, whom he called Old Man and IGN. Or the rebuttals to his nicknaming of the king. With his directions given, Naruto began to make his way down the stairway to the room he could speak to the king with. What he wasn't expecting, Veer was a tall man with Rhaenys features and silver hair, and a woman who could well be her twin in a different life. Each wore the signature colors of House Targaryen, both standing at the basin of tea. He massive throne constructed from nothing but swords, causing him to ask just where they all came from, silently conversing with one another. Sorry, should I come back later? He asked, drawing their attention. The man rounded on him and stared intently, memorizing his face. Naruto tilted his head, somewhat nervous. Hello, are you the boy that my little girl told me about? The man asked, as he gazed at the honestly confused young man standing before him. Told you what, about who? He stifled a yawn behind his hand. The man growled. Boy. The woman smacked the man on the chest and shot him a look. Calm yourself, husband. When said man subsided with a grunt, she looked to him anew. Rhaenys, young man, she is our daughter. She spoke cordially to him. I understand you recently made her acquaintance. Naruto said as he planted his fist into his palm. So you're her parents, it's nice to meet you. He said with a grin. Naruto Uzumaki, at your service. He followed this up with a bow. He hated doing the noble stuff, but Granny Tsunade had it beat into him for courtly business if he wanted to become Hokage. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is Jocelyn, and this is my husband Emin. She greeted with a smile, only to turn and see her husband scowling, to which she nudged him in the ribs. Emin, dearest, greet our daughter's guest. Emin groaned, looking almost uncomfortable by the notion. Physically ill at the very concept of it. Had Naruto known his thoughts, he would have been most wary indeed. Emin was a good father. Nay, an excellent father. And this was a boy. A man. The thing that would come claim his baby girl away from his loving embrace. The creature his daughter sang the praises of. She'd been up half the night babbling about the new friends she'd made. Of the miracles he had wrought, how she wanted to learn magic from him. And now said boy stood before him, nary the wiser for his own peril. Suffice to say, he was not happy. Through grit teeth, he bowed his head and looked at him. A pleasure to meet thee, boy. Naruto didn't miss the man's anger. Strange, why was he angry at him? Seeking safer waters, he tried to turn the subject elsewhere. Don't suppose either of you have seen Rhaenys? Emin made a noise caught somewhere between a snarl and a sigh. She is resting, after all she had quite the night. Leave her be. Jocelyn shook her head. Forgive him. He is overprotective, she said, turning her gaze to her scowling husband, when he should know better. Well, I guess it's all right seeing as he loves your daughter so much. Naruto said calmly. So I guess I can't get angry with ya. He finished with a grin. Wanna be friends? Emin narrowed his eyes at the boy, violet eyes shrinking to near slits. Friends? With the mongrel who sought to snatch his daughter away? No. Nay. Never. Plan B it was then. He was gonna need some honey. Pickles. Feathers. And maybe a skunk pelt. He would need to get in contact with both his nephews if he wanted to get it done properly though. As for Naruto, he sensed a prank coming on, but not from who or where. He was gonna need to prepare. He was gonna need some beans. A water bucket filled with tar. A pair of prunes. And a feather. The Red Keep didn't know it yet, but a prank war was about to commence. Heavily implying that Emon favors pranks just as much as Naruto. After all, we all know how energetic he was. And there we have it. Hope you enjoyed this chapter and looking forward to your feedback. As ever, reviews are the fuel that sustain me. Without them I cannot write a single word. Simple as that. Working nearly all hours of the day keep me absurdly busy. As such, I can't bring myself to write something folks don't like. On there we go. As ever, reviews keep me alive. Without them, I cannot write. So, in the immortal words of Atlas, review, would you kindly? Hope you enjoyed this, and may your day be filled with lots of luck. Warm regards. Tilda ends. Spoilers. 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 Plot details ahoy. Ye be warned. Read at your own risk. As ever, these are from the far-flung future, or are they tilde? Previews are mostly the same, wouldn't want to spoil things now. Previews. What many people saw as a disability, Naruto saw a point made. The loss of his arm had done nothing to slow him down. The two unparalleled warriors clashed steel on steel. Their bodies sliding past one another in the sand as they turned back to face each other, swinging their swords at the same time and locked them together for a moment. Naruto ducked under a swipe, and shifted the sword in his hand and held it in a reverse grip to stop the next strike. How? I watched you burn in wildfire. The knight snarled at him, only for Naruto to grin in response. He pushed back, and spun around as he flipped the sword in his hand back to its normal hold and once more locked blades. It takes more than a little fire to kill me. The blonde responded, and then with a surge of chakra, broke the hold they had on one another before kicking the sword out of his enemy's hand and into the air. Tossing the sword in the air, Naruto quickly performed a roundhouse that dente. The steel plating while sending the knight skidding across the ground, while at the same time, Naruto caught the sword and then lashed out with a kick that struck his opponent's sword and sent it flying at him. The man raised his shield, blinking slightly surprised when the weapon shot through the steel and nearly struck him in the eye. With a grunt, he ripped it out of the puncture and growled as he charged towards the brat and bashed him in the face with his shield, causing him to stumble back a couple steps. But Naruto wasn't easily defeated. He stopped the next shield bash with a foot, and slammed the mon's protection into the ground, and pressed, embedding it deeply to the point the straps broke off. Spinning around him, Naruto smashed his elbow into his head, stunning the man as he pulled back and away. Pieces of steel cracked off his helmet and fell down onto the ground, showing just how hard the knight had been struck by the boy as he was still reeling from the hit. Naruto rotated his wrist, blocking a messy swipe with his sword, spun around and defended his back from a lunge, swiped the sword through the air and redirected the strike aimed at his chest, then locked swords. This the best you can do, boy? The knight sneered. This boy isn't even using a tenth of his true capabilities. Naruto smirked back. If I wanted, I'd turn you into a crimson smear on the ground, he responded. Then why don't you put the gold where your mouth is, brat? Alright Kurama, let's do this. You better not be out of shape now, he called out. Within his seal, Kurama was actually feeling a bit excited to show his power to this side of the world, and he responded with, "Ha! Don't be foolish, I'm always ready to go," and clasped his hands in a similar fashion as his host did. Naruto grinned as he cracked his neck, right. H and he began to unleash more chakra. The sheer potency could now be felt across the continent as Naruto allowed himself to let loose for the first time in 2 years. Naruto's clones all roared as one as the dome of chakra protecting the bystanders glowed brightly before they began to expand in size and power, rising up into the air and curling around themselves in a fashion many realized to be a dome meant to contain something of incredible power, that being the tailed beast bomb used by Momoshiki. The citizens all had to cove their faces, as the sheer power threatened to throw them away, the winds blasting them as Naruto roared in what appeared to be a dual voice, roar. Work tilde. Before his form began to become enshrouded by the sheer output of his power, his hair waved wildly as he expelled incredible levels of raw energy that nearly tore the world around them apart like waves crashing upon the sands. Before anyone could ask what the hell was going on, RLY terrifying roar that almost made their hair stand on end resounded through the air, causing them to look up and into the nearly transparent energy where the clearly made out the form of a massive canine of sorts. Watching as it mimicked the exact motions of Naruto, and it caught the large sphere of destructive power, while at the same time the large tails closed over the top, containing any possible fallout or destruction. It made sense now why these two monsters that attacked called him Fox, as the beast itself was indeed a gigantic fox that was more mountain than animal. As the massive hands caught the dark orb, it was shoved down, the lower portion of its body digging into the ground, ripping up the remaining foundations of the battleground. As the orb slowed to a halt, the tails finished closing up at the top. And just in time as a loud explosion filled the air. "What, you want a piece of me?" Naruto called out as Caraxes hissed at him, his maw filling with flame. The hissing got fiercer, and with a roar, both struck one another, but only one succeeded. Caraxes' head shot back and up as Naruto snapped his fist into the Crimson Dragon's lower jaw. "You think I'm afraid of you, a lizard with wings? I ain't scared of nothing." The blonde growled. "So, let me see if I got this straight, you want me to use a hammer? Yay, I mean you told me that you can use lightning, air, and water, right? I'd figured you like it." Rhaenys pointed out. "Be that as it may, that is a terrible joke, but I'll see what it can do." Mjolnir, it was named Mjolnir. Rhaenys smiled at him. "Mjolnir, I like it," he said smiling. "You know what, it suits it. Ah, the so-called prank war between the princes and Naruto of House Uzumaki, now that is a tale." "How so?" "Well, aside from fact it nearly drove the king to ripping his hair out, it was actually a betting game by the middle of it." "I don't understand." "Well, typically the princes and Naruto would pull a single prank a day, following so far." "Well yes. But it is 3-on-1, quite unfair if you ask me." "Oh ho ho, but as unfair as it seemed, Naruto always was a creative one. You see, it was a betting game to see who would get a prank put on them. It is said to have been mostly demon." "Correct. Viserys would usually end up somehow pranking his baby brother, and Naruto would unleash his own upon Viserys. But what about Emon? He got raw end of the deal. Meaning he was always hit with a prank. Indeed, some called him the badly lucked one for the duration of the pranks. Because of his daughter. Because of his wife. So Naruto was evenly matched in their war. Quite the opposite, the princes were soundly defeated by what was called a whoopee cushion. But, didn't the prank war last an entire year? It was said to have lasted 3 years before the princes admitted their sound defeat. Prank War of King's Landing. Prank War Interlude. 3 months had passed since Naruto arrived at the Red Keep. And he liked to think he'd garnered a rather decent layout of the place and the residents who lived there. He'd become something of a people person, you know. He read people. It was what he did. Viserys was Rhaenys' cousin and had a brother demon who liked picking fights. Generally a good kid, but was nervous of his own shadow. Then there was Demon, a kid with attitude, but a fierce loyalty to those he loved. These were the two who had been giving him the most trouble for the past 3 months aside from Emon due to all the pranks they were trying to pull on him. That's right, pranks. Evidently they were a thing in Westeros, too. Who knew? To say that he was overjoyed by this development was an understatement. After all, if one could be pranked, so too could they be pranked in turn. So began the infamous prank wars, and what wars they were. The nature of some pranks went a little something like this. 0.0.0.0. Prank 1 Naruto vs Emon. In the middle of the night, Prince Emon Targaryen woke up to the horrid sounds of cats. He hated the damned critters. The whole place reeked of the smell of fish, and he found he had a string of heads wrapped around his neck. He opened the door to his room and he and Jocelyn witnessed a battle royale going on between their guardsmen and a massive, horrid feline invasion. He heard his father scream, "This is worse th." And the time Alysanne gave birth for the first time. The small family would be battling fiendish felines until mid-morning when they finally declared victory and located the man who had given the heads away for free at the fish market. The few remaining guards in combat shape followed the trail back to the cellar and proceed to kick his ass so hard that the old man's ancestors felt it. All the while, oblivious to a disguised blonde boy smiling from the shadows. Success tilde. 0.0.0.0. Prank 2 Emon vs Naruto. So, you like guys, right? Emon felt his jaw drop. I see, well, it certainly explains a lot. Naruto didn't bat an eyelash. I ought to kick your ass. The prince growled. Hey, he feigned a shrug, just because you don't take rejection from me well doesn't mean you live a life of loneliness. I'm sure there's a man out there just waiting for a pretty boy like you. Emin was purple by now and ready to go off like a bomb. That's not what I meant, you little. That will be enough out of both of you, yelled Jaehaerys before the bloodletting started. I will not have fighting in my house, Emin, so stand down. Naruto, go over there and eat alone. And stop pestering one another for Seven's sake. The king ordered as Emin stormed off in a rage, swearing to murder the Orange Menace. I kind of feel bad for the guy. Naruto hummed. Jaehaerys shook his head. You're really not helping matters, boy. You're right, I should have done more, countered the blonde amiably, still grinning like a fox. I mean, I could have sent Emin over to Lady Jocelyn to ask for some hair care tips and tender loving care. I can't help it that I don't swing his way. Jaehaerys found that his granddaughter's laughter was infectious and practically had to shove his fist in his mouth. To keep from bursting into hysterics himself. He wagged a finger accusingly at Naruto before he walked away to crack up in private. That aside, most of the family was left either snickering or openly laughing at Emin's expense. Another defeat for the poor prince. Utter failure. 0.0.0.0. Prank 3. Something was amiss. In hindsight, he should have known better. Naruto realized it in an instant when he awoke one morning to find himself bound to his bed. Someone had tied his arms to the headboard and bound his legs to the foot of the bed with a great deal of heavy rope, leaving his limbs stretched taut. Damn it, Emin must have done it while he was sleeping. He'd always been something of a heavy sleeper. Viserys and Demon must have helped. Small wonder he didn't notice. He'd be sure to get the princes back for this. Perhaps that'd been the end of it, he would have simply broken free and called it a day. Kurama snorted in his ear, the sound of someone trying very hard not to laugh. Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right here. Naruto looked down, frowned. Someone had tarred and feathered him, leaving his clothes and a great deal of his face besides, covered in white chicken feathers. It was actually kinda impressive. They'd been subtle about it, too, conducting their work without even an iota of ill intent, knowing such would wake him. Definitely not the princes, then. They weren't sneaky enough for this. But who could possibly be so quick and clever as to? Ahem. Naruto looked up and found Princess Rhaenys beaming back at him from where she sat at the foot of the bed. Clad in a royal red dress. She held a dark brush in one hand, a bucket another, with a basket of freshly plucked feathers laid out on a nearby table. She didn't try to run from his gaze, nor did she hide, indeed. She made absolutely no effort to conceal her amusement at his plight. As he looked on in quiet consternation, she tilted her head and laid her tools at his feet. You're finally awake. Good. His jaw clicked open, aghast. Rhaenys, you boys seem to be having such fun. I decided to show you how it was done. Naruto inhaled deeply through his nose, only to snort an spu. Ttered as he accidentally inhaled a feather. Ordinarily he would have been ranting and raving now, swearing vengeance, demanding to be released. Oddly enough, he felt none of those things. Indeed, none of them at all. On the contrary, he felt something else, a curious, quaint emotion that he hadn't experienced in quite some time. He tilted his head and pondered it for a moment, trying to make heads or tails of it to no avail, at first. So this was what pride in someone else felt like. Unfortunately, it was overshadowed by an unyielding demand for payback in his very bones. With but a flick of his wrist and a twist of his ankles, he broke the bonds binding him. The rope snapped as he sprang to his feet, causing her to jolt back. She hadn't realized he was that strong, had she? Good to know. You do realize, of course. He growled at her, idly rubbing his right wrist as he worked the kinks out of his neck, that this means war. Credit where it was due, she must have realized that. She edged toward the door. What did you have in mind? A few things. He didn't answer her audibly, not at first. Pausing to squint at her, he wiped the detritus from his face, removing all tea. He tar and feathers there with some effort. Rhaenys didn't try to flee, bless her simple soul. She probably knew he would chase her down with a vengeance. Then again, she could have gotten a proper head start on him and might have escaped what was to come. Crouching down, Naruto retrieved the bucket of tar and the basket of feathers. I have just the thing. Her gaze flitted to the tar and feathers. The brush even now gripped in his right hand. No. Rhaenys blanched, quick to step back. You wouldn't dare. Naruto hefted the brush like a sword of old. Wouldn't I? Rhaenys gulped. Naruto, no. He grinned. Naruto, yes. I am a princess. He shrugged his shoulder. All's fair in love and far. And this is war. She sputtered, flailed her hands, and tried something else. You'll ruin my dress. You should have thought about that before you decided to prank me. He stepped forward, forcing her to retreat until she backed up into a wall. He slammed a hand into it to keep her from escaping and from there leaned forward and down just so, butting his head against hers. Now, are you gonna run? His voice dropped to a dangerous rumble, or do you wanna make this easy for me? Wait, why was her face so red all of a sudden? Meh, probably nothing, it likely didn't matter. Vengeance was at hand. Poor, naive, dense boy. He really had no idea what he'd just done, nor what he had sparked in Rhaenys. Her gaze flicked to the door, gauging her chances of making a successful getaway. I'll give you a 3-second head start, he offered with a grin. Rhaenys made frustrated Rhaenys noises. Naruto began the countdown. 1. Rhaenys ducked under his arm and fled with a shriek. 2. He heard her round the corner, it wouldn't save her. 3. With that said, he gave chase. Rhaenys yelped and ran all the faster. To be fair, he could have caught her immediately. He did not. And why should he? After all, the chase was half the fun in a prank. And so the prank wars raged ever onward, much to the secret amusement of old King Jaehaerys. In those days, the Red Keep was a source of constant merriment and laughter. It wouldn't last. Naruto held up a scroll and laid upon the table. Taking a moment to consider it, he eyed each of the markings within, searching for the right one. What in the hells is that? Rhaenys peered over his shoulder with a look of confusion as she watched him work. Sealing scroll, he answered without looking up. And that is? She asked again. Right, no chakra. It's basically a container for various things I wanna have on me but not weigh me down, he told her. Trying to remember what he'd been taught, every shinobi worth their salt knew now to make a sealing scroll, but it had been ages since he'd felt the need and besides, that wasn't what he was here for. It's really useful. I see, so it's basically a pouch that holds your stuff, like a squire. Her chin came down over his shoulder as he hummed. Distracting girl. He forced himself to focus. Kinda, but not exactly. He looked across the seals in front of him, finding one he needed and sent some chakra into it. A puff of smoke, and some calligraphy equipment sat in front of him. Hey, still had it. Wow, I didn't think that was possible. Rhaenys balked at him, eyes wide. You brought out writing material like nothing. Not for writing, sit, he said as he grabbed a brush and began inspecting it. She eyed him warily, youthful face pinching in confusion. Why, sit. The feisty princess sat, though not without more questions. You have parchment, and ink, she said, what else could it be for? My people use chakra, as you well know, he told her, but what you don't know, is that the energy each warrior from my homeland has a limited amount. What about you? You have a substantial amount. The princess said. Naruto chuckled. Well, she wasn't wrong there. I've been called a monster for the amount I possess. He chuckled, and yes, I do possess a high quantity of chakra. So, what is this all for? If I may ask, she questioned, still not seeing the point of his meddling. Simple. I'm going to try and transfer and start up your chakra, he said. Mine. She blinked. I have no such thing. Yes, you do. He corrected her gently, reveling in the surprise in shining through her violet eyes. I sense chakra in you and your family. It's just been closed off for a long time now, he told her. By what, exactly, I don't know, but with chakra, you can command the elements, heal, gain immense strength and many other things. Which you will teach me, of course, she preened, smugly tossing some pale hair over her shoulders. Flick. Don't get cocky. He warned her as she rubbed her forehead. I've seen just what a small amount of hubris can do to a guy with chakra. You don't want to end up like him. It was merely a jest, she rubbed her forehead with a whine. And what exactly happened to this overtly proud man, might I ask? I killed him. Dodo from T. He Land of Snow was oh so proud of his chakra armor, He'd boasted and gloated over it every time he had encountered him. And yet for all its invincibility, it was incapable of stopping a single Rasengan when he was a brat. There were others, but Dodo had been one of the more prominent figures when it came to his ego. Nagato and Madara could at least back up the boastings due to their own capabilities. Dodo was just, so cringe. Rhaenys shook her head, mildly bemused. Of course you killed him, she muttered. I don't know why I expected anything less. What else could he have done but end him? Look, my life wasn't necessarily one that could be seen as good or bad. He began, people didn't like me, I humbled them. People grew to respect me, I thanked them for their acceptance and protected them. Thinking of that brought back pleasant memories from the land of snow and another, far surlier princess he eventually brought back to the light. But what I'm about to teach you, show you. You must promise me you won't let it go to your head. Can you promise me that? Rhaenys tilted her head, vaguely reminding him of her dragon, Melis. Why are you acting so strange? She questioned. You're seldom this serious, ow. Quote. Naruto flicked her forehead again, drawing a hiss from her and a baleful glare that promised retribution. I want you to understand, chakra isn't a toy, he Abid her forehead again with one finger to drive his point home. You use too much, you could kill yourself from tearing your body apart. This power is not a toy, it's a part of a bigger picture than you realize, and when you harness it, you will understand that it isn't all it's cracked up to be. And, on the off chance I'm able to start up your chakra, you might only have a small amount to do the basics of the basics. He crossed his arms, and I'm not talking doing illusionary clones and the like, I'm talking just basic enhancements like speed or strength. You'll have to work your way up from there. Rhaenys huffed. I'm well aware of your warnings. Magic can hurt, but I don't want that kind of power. I want to help people, I want to heal those who can't get the aid that others are willing to give them. This could give me that chance to attain my dream. Her gaze met his intently, a rare moment of sincerity shining through. My silly brothers and cousins might want a power to use for a fight. I see this as an opportunity to learn how to save lives instead of end them like most who oppose our house. Ho ho ho, a spitfire. A deep chuckle filled Naruto's ears. Better be careful, s. He seems to be like one of those who isn't afraid to punch first, ask later. Quiet, Kurama. He shushed the massive fox. Regardless, I don't simply wish to lord power over people who are already living in strife. If I can uplift them, give them strength, then I will have done a deed worth fulfilling, the princess finished. Naruto smiled. Good to hear, he told her honestly. He gestured for her to cross her legs and sit on the ground. Give me your hand, he said. Rhaenys blushed. This was much too improper, she was too young. She wasn't sure she was even ready for such a proposal. She wasn't sure her heart could handle such an ardent proposition. Regardless, she held a shaky hand out to him. Please be gentle, she whispered. I was planning to. If this goes south, you could get hurt, he said as he flicked the brush. And suddenly, black ink began to ooze from the bristles. Okay, let me see, he hummed to himself as he began to draw a series of intricate and delicate lines across her hand and slightly past her wrist. A quick and fluid speed built up a powerful sealing jutsu that would give her chakra. As an Uzumaki, sealing jutsu was as natural to him as breathing air. Watching from inside the seal, Kurama grinned. Naruto is not half Uzumaki, as clans always grow stronger by adding strong DNA to them. Naruto is a full Uzumaki, because of his father's genetics enhanced his mother's own genetics in Naruto. Add in my chakra and you have a monster in the making. But, Naruto is special. Having been exposed to my power from the very moment of his conception and then sealing me into him upon birth. His brilliance was only set in stone, he thought as he watched his Jinchuriki paint a powerful and intricate seal on each vein, each bone, each inch of her skin. While Minato had near Uzumaki level chakra reserves that allowed him to use Sage Mode and had nearly Uzumaki level talent in Fuinjutsu, his talents were for battle only. Kushina and Minato both had the Uzumaki clan wind affinity. Kurama remembered the blonde's capabilities, and while he possessed lightning and water-style techniques, he preferred his natural-born abilities over that of others. Not only that, but Minato also had Uzumaki levels of life force, allowing him to survive being impaled by my claw before dying after using the Shiki Fujin for longer than others could survive. Naruto is more of an Uzumaki than even his mother. Seeing as he possesses far more chakra greater than any Uzumaki before him. He even rewrote and created a new style of Fuinjutsu in order to continue to restrain me in a blink of an eye, the Torii seal. He also has an extremely powerful wind affinity, with him being able to fling attacks that shred mountains with ease. Kurama thought to himself, remembering the immense power that Naruto used to create a massive Rasenshuriken as he stood on top of the God Tree, a shining light of pure force of willpower that was unmatched by even Madara Uchiha's own impressive capabilities. Add in the fact that Naruto fully survived the extraction of half of my power after fighting in a war for 2 days with no rest, sharing his chakra with over 30,000 men, getting his chakra drained. And even while he was dying, Naruto was still actively sharing his chakra with the shinobi armed forces. His power rivals that of the old man himself in his elder years before his death. And he still has time to grow stronger from it all. Naruto isn't half Uzumaki. Naruto is the best example of what an Uzumaki should be, other than having that annoying red hair. Kurama chuckled to himself as he watched Naruto add the final additions to the sealing technique he was going to use on the princess. Naruto double-checked the matrix, the various unknown textures that Rhaenys couldn't understand or comprehend. When he was sure everything was going to work perfectly, he nodded to himself and looked her in the eye. Alright, this is going to either be the most painful experience you have had in your life, or it's gonna be one hell of an rush, just saying. So this will let me do all of the same things you can do? She asked hopefully. Naruto shrugged, like I said before, I don't know. He stated, you could awaken a large pool of chakra to draw from or one that only allows for the basics like I mentioned. He sighed, where I'm from we can't do blow. OD transfusions on ordinary people or field of battle, and the only people you can accept blood from are people from the same clan normally. Naruto explained to her. He wasn't an expert, but even he went to those insufferable classes that explained life or death in battle, but this should let me channel my own personal chakra into you and awaken it inside your body. However, it is going to take a lot of these seals to do so as I need to apply it to each section of the body from each hand and finger to the arms, legs and feet as well as your chest and stomach and head. It'll be a delicate process that could take weeks to finish and have the results. He told her honestly, and with my healing capabilities you won't die so, yay, there is that. He shrugged, still up for it. Shame Ruka hadn't been here. He would be able to explain it better, but damn did his lectures make it so damn boring with his put people to sleep jutsu, via eternal torture by lecture jutsu, in which he, Sasuke, Kiba, Shikamaru no surprise there and even Kiba as well as Choji all fell asleep to the Mons, lectures halfway through. Rhaenys nodded, of course, I trust you. She smiled at him. Naruto nodded and sent some chakra into the seal. Nothing happened. Rhaenys frowned. I don't feel anything. Until she did. Bliss, pain, pleasure, agony. Countless sensations assailed her all at once from head to toe. Gasping, she buckled beneath them and blacked right out. And when she awoke, everything would change. On scene. Hope you enjoyed Advent's work. As ever, reviews are the fuel that sustain me. Without them I cannot write a single word. Simple as that. Working nearly all hours of the day keep me absurdly busy. As such, I can't bring myself to write something folks don't like. On there we go. As ever, reviews keep me alive. Without them, I cannot write. So, in the immortal words of Atlas, review, would you kindly? Hope you enjoyed this, and may your day be filled with lots of luck. Warm regards. Tilda ends. Spoilers. 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 Plot details ahoy. Ye be warned. Read at your own risk. As ever, these are from the far-flung future, or are they tilde? Previews are mostly the same. Wouldn't want to spoil things now. Previews. I can't marry her, she's 15. Naruto panicked. Hey, I'm 16 turning 17 on the morrow, thank you very much, she rebutted him. That don't make it any better. He squawked. It's 2 years difference, what's it matter to you? She crossed her arms under her chest. I'm 19 years old, there is a very big reason. And, this is my choice, and I have chosen. You might as well give her what she wants, she won't stop till you do. Another voice stated. Thank you demon. Rhaenys smirked. Jaehaerys and the good Queen Alysanne. watched as Rhaenys laughed while she ran around trying to show off the progression of her newfound power in her possession. Magic. A Targaryen with magic. He could only assume it was such. For what else could this gift possibly buy? It was a miracle unto itself that a small portion of the forgotten ways had been returned to the world. Dragons were said to be the will of flame made flesh, the wrath of the gods brought to the physical world. Such was why only those of old Valyria had been able to master them and ride them for over 6,000 years before the time of doom, where dragons were brought to their knees and all but wiped out from existence. Magic had been an abundant thing in the past, but was forgotten swiftly upon the doom's conclusion. Now, only those so-called magicians of Karth Da Red say that they practiced the ways of magic. Yet Naruto's words said and even proved otherwise, made them seem paltry even. Drugs and sleight of hand, a fitting tool for con artists and thieves. Perha. P.S. He ought to have Naruto and Demon wipe them out. The destruction and subsequent robbing of their possessions would doubtless leave an impression for sure if they were to ever return, then their history and capabilities were further diminished by the loss of all that their so-called power entailed. For now, the wise king was content with watching his granddaughter laugh and dance the day away. Her lessons in riding Melis were going good as well. Her father took to taking her out daily while he rode beside on Vagar. Balerion had yet to be seen the last couple months. Apparently he was flying around the realm and world entire Harrenhal, Winterfell, Storm's Reach, Sunspear, Old Town, Karth, Astaper, Yunkai, Marine. Apparently he was also seen flying around or near Valyria as well. For what reasons? Not even he could surmise. Sarah, who even now, as his youngest daughter at 25 was still unwedded, was supposedly returning from her expedition with her beloved dragon Ethrak, the White Wind Rider. But her return date was unknown as of yet. Hopefully his daughter would return soon. 0.0.0. 6 months had passed since Naruto had began to create a chakra network within the young Princess Rhaenys Targaryen. In those 6 months he had expanded and increased the amount of her growing chakra network she would have access to when he would finish it. To say she was excited to finally begin training was an understatement, but first she wanted to thank him properly, for his service to the crown. While yes, he had saved Balerion's life, and possibly even extended the gigantic dragon's life expectancy, she felt she could do more for him for all he had done for her house. She was the rider of the Red Queen, Melis, a dragoness of power that had no equal in terms of speed. And her fire was as fierce as her roar. She was a worthy companion for her, and as such, she felt that the Mage of the Red Keep deserved a fitting gift in return. Today had called him to the training yard, where she would then proudly present it to him in a white weirwood box that was covered in silk, her expression showing excitement as she motioned him towards his prize, where a quick yank of the cloth revealed what awaited him inside. Naruto paused, blinked once, blinked again. Now, do you like it? This is a hammer, he remarked to her with a dull honesty. I'm not good with hammers. Grateful for the gift, sure. But how would I use it? You use it to bash people's heads in. The princess shrugged. I mean, what else would it do? So, let me see if I got this straight. You want me to use a hammer? Naruto asked her just to be safe. Yay, I mean you told me that you can wield the elements of lightning, air, and water, didn't you? Rhaenys pointed out. I'd figured you like it. Among other things, yay. But that wasn't really the point. As he turned the hammer back and forth, Naruto took its design in. He could see that it was crafted out of pure Valyrian steel somio. Nay had gone through a large amount of effort in order to have gathered a large stockpile of it to either forge this masterpiece or find and retrieve it, but given how rare the metal was, it was probable. Why the second rather than the first? And he wasn't too keen on asking who or why. He grasped it by the handle to turn it where he could inspect it further. It had a relatively short but richly decorated and refined wooden handle, embellished by a splendid gold pommel, designed with 2 goats. The head of the hammer is of an atypical and relatively aggressive shape, featuring sharp edges that contrast with the beautiful curves shaping the underside of the hammer. Much like any Valyrian steel weapon that was forged, it was covered in various runes and symbols, making a simple but extremely elegant piece of craftsmanship. Looking to Rhaenys with a plain look, he continued, "Be that as it may, that is a terrible joke, but I'll see what it can do." "Does it have a name?" "Mjolnir, it was named Mjolnir." Rhaenys smiled at him. Strange name. But Westerer did love their fancy namings and titles now, didn't they? Mjolnir, I like it, he said smiling kindly, you know what, it suits it. Thank you for this gift. The princess gave a smile as she heard his words, and then paused to look at him as she watched him easily loft the weapon. I'm surprised you could lift it in all honesty, that thing reek. You hired several men working together to get it onto the table from the weight alone. Even I couldn't budge it. Naruto chuckled nervously, yay, to be honest I'm having trouble holding it up as I am if you want the truth. Guess I'll have to train myself up in order to properly to hold it, much less use it in a fight. Well, I'm sure you'll manage just fine. Rhaenys granted him a small smile all her own. To Naruto, after all. You're the strongest person I know. His heart fluttered treacherously at that. How he felt. Thank you, princess. Naruto nodded to her. Don't start with that. Rhaenys shook her head, trying to hide her reddening cheeks. Rhaenys. Naruto. Come inside, it is time for dinner. The queen declared loud enough for them to hear. Coming. Naruto answered as he looked to the younger girl, well, shall we? We shall. Rhaenys smiled happily. 0.0.0. Dinner among the royal family was a usually normal event, insofar as Westeros went. Jaehaerys took some small parental pride in that. Naruto and Demon would discuss forms of training also as to improve themselves overall. Viserys would question Jaehaerys on ruling just in case he was to take over after his own father or uncle. Rhaenys would in turn pester her mother to let her pick up a sword which was always denied. Tonight however, things would begin to shift and change. Balerion had finally returned at the behest and coaxing of his son Balon and Vhagar's leading and once more resided among the other dragons. Vhagar was once more curled up near the elder black-scaled dragon who was now once more growly. Ing at a substantial pace and no longer fit in the pit itself. As it stood, Demon and Viserys presently had yet to either claim dragons for themselves, and Jaehaerys figured it was time to take them to get a dragon for themselves. So it was that the old king softly lowered his utensil down to his plate, took a breath to fortify himself, and spoke. Demon, Viserys, tomorrow we shall venture into the pit, and finally claim your dragons. Quote. The chatter immediately died, but in it, he didn't fail to notice the curious looks of young Naruto and Rhaenys. Grandfather, are you sure? Viserys questioned. The wise king nodded his head. Seeing as your cousin Rhaenys has claimed herself a dragon, I believe it would be wise to also bond you to your own dragons. Demon smirked, well, I already have one in mind. Jaehaerys had an inkling of which one. Every the bold boy. Oh do you? The queen chuckled. Yes, but I will not be sure until I try to claim him, he said honestly. Very well, tomorrow. We will retrieve this dragon and see if you can be bonded. The king nodded before looking to Viserys, and what about you, do you have a dragon in mind as well, lad? Viserys nodded with hesitance, why yes. There is a dragon I wish to claim as well, he said, a beautiful blue dragon that recently laid a clutch. The king and his family smiled as Naruto nodded his head in approval, you mean Ramesha. The dragon named after the Valyrian moon goddess that just had her second clutch huh? Rhaenys questioned, having brought the young prince into the pit to help him claim all the newly laid eggs. Originally, from what the prince had admitted in secret to Naruto he had wanted to claim Balerion before he had left, but upon seeing the blue-green dragon, he had been enamored with her and desired her ever since. She was roughly 20 or so years old and was still quite young, but perhaps that too was for the best. Viserys nodded, humming a little, indeed, I believe with her youth, she will be a very good companion and would have little to worry about concerning her health, he said, though I would not mind another dragon if she rejects me. If you get the chance, brother. Demon granted him a warning look. The issue can be addressed tomorrow. For now, let us eat and then head to bed. Balon stated calmly unto his sons, it shall be a day of utmost importance, and I am sure it'll be just as long if we have issues in matching you to a dragon. Yes, father. Demon bowed his head. Of course. Viserys nodded. Hey, keep your heads up, I'm sure you'll be bonded to a good match. Naruto said to the two young men who smiled in response. Dinner would conclude shortly after and the two princes would rush off to bed so they could get some rest. Rhaenys herself would spend Anyo their hour with the queen before she too retired. Naruto himself had excused himself in order to clean himself up in privacy and would turn in shortly after. Jaehaerys dared to hope everything would go well. Surely the young ones wouldn't cause too much trouble. Bah, he kidding. 0.0.0.0. The next day soon came, and no sooner had Naruto been awoken than Rhaenys was in turn stirred by a handmaiden to ensure her lessons for the day would begin, though not until after her cousins had managed to claim the dragons they had chosen. The fact that the practice of placing a dragon egg into the cradle of any heir of the Targaryen house began with King Jaehaerys' own elder sister and was in practice even now showed that despite the numerous eggs they possessed, not all of them would hatch to potential riders. And as such had to rely on those who were already hatched and available to ride. In fact, aside from Balerion and Vhagar, the only dragons that had hatched for any Targaryen was quite small. Vermithor hatched when Jaehaerys was only a year old, the egg having remained next to his side as he refused to let anyone take it from his grasp. Apparently he was quite possessive of the egg until Vermithor was born and had to be put to sleep in order to protect the tiny creature. Silverwing had hatched for Alysanne when she was a few months old as well and was instantly bonded to her and had been inseparable ever since. Caraxes had hatched days before Balon had been born. Alysanne had been holding the egg to her stomach while she waited for her son to be born, and instantly made a name for himself. The little Spitfire didn't take kindly to anyone who was not his rider and would tend to burn them to ash if they got too close. Ethrak had hatched to Sarah when she was X months of age and hadn't left her side until she was 4 and too big for the crib by then. She was very protective of her space and more so her rider. Other than that, all the remaining dragons had been born when Jaehaerys and Alysanne had been quite young. Rhaenys had always been adamant on claiming Miles for herself. Aemon desired Vhagar, and the remainder of his heirs had all died at young ages or as stillborn births. But, here and now he would witness his grandchildren claiming their mounts for themselves. He was half tempted to give Naruto a chance to claim a dragon for himself after all he'd said and done for the family. But the boy was adamant on finding such a mount elsewhere if he was able to be it through finding eggs in other locations or even wild dragons who had not been brought to heel. Meeting at the base of the Iron Throne, the family would depart as one, and one ninja would find his day nearly ruined by a single dragon. The dragon pit was a massive construct built by the order of Maegor, the cruel Jaehaerys' uncle who ruled before him and completed the Targaryen conquest of ruling, except Dorne, who remained free of unifying under their control and law. It was Compel, ETED by the time Jaehaerys had turned 20, and by then most dragons had been caged up like animals. Balerion and Vhagar were simply too big to remain caged, something Naruto silently found relief in. Animals should not be pinned up unless there were certain reasons as to why. Don't get the wrong idea, the dragons were as much a part of the Targaryen rule as they themselves were to the dragons. However, pinning up the young dragons was not a good idea when the animal in question was a beast of war. Not some mindless beast. Dragons were intelligent and could understand verbal commands and responses. Jaehaerys stopped in front of the opening and looked to Demon. Very well, the dragon you speak of, before we enter, you must tell me so we can retrieve it from below. Demon shook his head, grinning ruefully. He's not in the pit. Grandfather. What do you mean? The king questioned. I want Balerion as my mount. Demon stated proudly. I would prefer Caraxes, but father still rides upon him. There are no other dragons I am interested in at this moment in time. Rhaenys clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a gasp. Kind of figured as much. Naruto said softly. Jaehaerys had to see LM himself before he nodded in acceptance. Very well, but if he rejects you, we shall seek another match for you, understood? Demon nodded briskly. His piece said. The king turned toward Viserys. Now then, since we are at the entrance, let us retrieve Ramesha for you to bond to. Balon looked to the king. I'm going to head out, father, need to find Sarah and bring her back before she decides to cause more trouble. She's likely made it to Dragonstone. I will begin my search there. Be quick about it, Alysanne said softly. Of course mother, I will return within a week at the latest. He smiled to the queen. Let me help you get Caraxes out, least I can do for helping me find something to do. Naruto said as he followed. He could hear Jaehaerys conversing with the dragon keepers but allowed them to continue their business while he helped the prince. Thank you for this, I normally have to yell at Caraxes to wake up so I can perform my duties. Balon admitted as he walked down he steps towards his dragon, the blonde sage following in silence. Should I be worried about Caraxes? I mean, Miles was seemingly fine with me being near, but I don't know Caraxes, he said. Balon shrugged, I'm sure you'll be fine. If Miles had no problems with you, I'm fairly certain you should be fine with Caraxes, he admitted. Fairly certain, he said. Sewer. Just great. But still, a dragon. He'd always wanted to ride one. He was well aware of the opportunity he was being offered here, the exception that was being made for his sake. How could he not be excited about that? All right, I'll trust you, he muttered as they rounded a corner that would lead directly to Caraxes. But if he tries to eat me, all bets are off. The moment they did, a hissing sound filled the dark hall, illuminated from the torch carried by Balon. Ah, I think he minds. Bah, you worry too much. Balon waved him off. Come, let's head in. Against his better judgment, Naruto allowed himself to be dragged into the darkness. The torch was bright enough to illuminate the cavern, the far end of the cave could be seen, the bloodworm standing at the ready, his mouth filled with fire and death. He did not look pleased to see him. Didn't feel like it, either. Balon, should I get back? He asked as Caraxes hissed, slowly approaching. The prince cringed, yes, that might be a good idea Suddenly a hiss filled the air before Naruto had to grab Balon and leap out of the way, the prince's cry of shock filling the air before Naruto looked at Caraxes in annoyance. You missed, ya bastard tilde. He was instantly forced to dodge another blast of flame, evading it by the merest of margins. Caraxes arched his long neck back, made indignant by the close call. Balon, go. No need to tell him twice. The older prince took the chance to run back toward the exit of the cavern while Naruto glared at the lizard in question. His eyes didn't waver and his annoyance shot up. What, you want a piece of me? He called out as Caraxes hissed at him, his maw filling with flame. He thumped his chest and stepped forward. Come on. The hissing got fiercer, and with a roar, both struck one another, but only one succeeded. Caraxes' head shot back and up as Naruto snapped his fist into the Crimson Dragon's lower jaw. You think I'm afraid of you, a lizard with wings? I ain't scared of nothing. The blonde growled. Come here. Caraxes hissed at him once more and lunged, only to miss as the blonde spun around and lashed out with a kick that stumbled the beast. Still not afraid, I've fought against beings far stronger tilde. So speaking, drew in some senjutsu and channeled it to a fist, hefting his hammer. Mjolnir sang in his grasp as he ducked under a claw, and brought the stout weapon crashing into the red dragon's chin. Thinking you can push people around is only gonna land you in the situation you're in now, so the smart thing to do is to walk away while you can. Beat it. A final hiss from Raxus filled the air before the bloodworm slithered away, back into the darkness which he came from. Naruto heaved out a sigh. I'm just gonna go now, he muttered and took off up towards the surface. Balon remained stunned in the silence of the cave for a few more minutes as he tried to understand what had just happened before he figured it was best not to know about it. He liked his sanity very much, thank you. 0.0.0. Naruto exited the cavern and was quickly found by Rhaenys. Sorry about that, wanted to help Balon and it took a while longer. He stated, so, what did I miss? He questioned. Ramisha has bound herself to Viserys as has Balerion chosen a rider. Rhaenys said. Wow, that's amazing. So Viserys bonded to Ramisha while Demon is the one that Balerion has given his allegiance. He curiously asked. That is correct. The Black Dread has bound himself to my cousin Demon who has become known as the Dreadbringer by the Keepers, she answered her crush. A sign of strength for our house, this is good. Her mother smiled as she heard the words. Come, let us return to the keep. Jaehaerys stated as he ushered them back towards the castle. I would hear more about your feats and this hammer of yours. The princess has spoken most highly of it. Naruto snapped a glare toward Rhaenys. Said princess whistled innocently. 0.0.0. So, you have been working on a way to fight using Mjolnir. You haven't exactly gone into depth on how you would do so. Jaehaerys stated in observation. From his own recollection it had only been a few weeks since Rhaenys had gifted him the hammer for his deeds. It's not much but it is a work in progress. Naruto admitted, admittedly, simply using it to just bash in a head is kinda redundant when it comes to me, but with my abilities I can hurl it and call it back with a snap. Short had been training to better his skills in combat, not that he had any major progress. At the end of the day, it was still a hammer. Intriguing. How did you make it so Mjolnir can return to your hand like that? The wise king asked, admitting in silence it's a very useful ability so he would never lose the weapon, but still wondered why he was trying it in the first place. Magic was so strange to the elder. Because the amount of times that I've lost it by now. If Rhaenys didn't remind me where I sat it beforehand, he added in embarrassment. He as so glad to put those tracking seals on it. Add in magnet release and it was never gone, still working out the kinks with that. You see, every other hammer I have used to train with so I could fight with Mjolnir isn't actually able to withstand the force of my blows. Hell, I'd be lucky to find a weapon that lasted beyond a single use for me, in all honesty. That makes me grateful that Mjolnir is easily capable to withstand all my attacks, but add in my control over magnetic forces, and it will return to my hand no matter where it lands. It's also a convenient size, allowing so I am able to always carry it around. A very useful combo if you think about it, explained Naruto, while Jaehaerys looked at him with eyes of approval. That's not even everything either, Naruto said, much to the king's silent disbelief. I took the time to create myself a belt which doubles my strength and a pair of gauntlets in order to wield Mjolnir even more effectively. Why would you need to be even stronger to use the hammer? And what exactly do those gauntlets help with? Questioned Jaehaerys in confusion, wondering why the boy would need to have a belt that doubles his strength or special gauntlets. So I don't need to keep holding back, Naruto retorted, with the elder freezing at his response. Did you say, to stop holding back? The king questioned as the whiskered teen nodded in response. Look, I get it. You're confused and I can safely assume that you had believed that I needed them so I can lift up Mjolnir and protect my hands. But the truth is, the gauntlets protect Mjolnir from the weight of my full-powered swings. The way they actually work is that they restrain my strength to a level where Mjolnir isn't in danger. At the same time, the belt makes it so even if the gauntlets protect Mjolnir, anyone that the hammer hits still feels the full force of my swings. I don't need them to wield Mjolnir, I needs them so that I can keep using it, Naruto replied, while the wise king looked at him with wide eyes. Damn, the king muttered, not sure what else to say to that. Yup. The blonde smacked his lips. Pretty much. Jaehaerys frowned, noticing his down. Boy. Naruto's grin was decidedly cheeky. Got anything for me to test this baby out on? I want you to seduce him. You want me to what, Tilda? Oh come on, don't tell me that you still haven't lost your virginity, you're nearly 30. Have some fun. I'm not prepared, Rhaenys, and I do not know him in such a fashion. Well, why not both of us? Tilda, a princess schemes. A game of schemes. Sarah Targaryen wasn't always the brightest of the king's heirs, and she was never his pride. She knew that, didn't like it, but she knew. Her brothers were always in the spotlight. What with one of them claiming Vagar, another hatching the most dangerous of worms that hated everyone except his master, it was a difficult task to earn her father's praise. Her only solace was that her dragon, her dear Ethrak, was nice enough to let anyone she chose to get close. Surprisingly, the guest that her beloved father brought into the keep was able to get along with several of the dragons, least of all Balerion the Dread, whom her cute little nephew had bonded to. And she had noticed that the Eldworm had gone from weak and feeble to proud and regal, as if he had been restored to his youth, and his size was increasing once more as well. That was good. She would hate to see such a proud and noble beast perish to something as feeble as age, though if what she heard had been true, parasites. Add in that little Viserys bonded to the dashing and gorgeous Ramesha, who had just laid her second clutch of eggs. There weren't many in the clutch, 3 of them to be exact, so this was quite surprising to see. An egg with a deep green color with burnished bronze flecks, and finally a black egg with scarlet ripples and swirls. Black was the rarest of all dragon colorings. The fact that one had been laid spelled either good fortune or bad tidings. So it was difficult to speculate what fate would befall the small creature within the egg. It was no mistake that a third black dragon was to be brought forth into the world. Balerion the Black Dread was the embodiment of House Targaryen's words, fire and blood. The cannibal was the antithesis of their house, signifying the madness that dwelled within their blood, the fury and crazed look a Targaryen would get if pushed beyond their limits. What would this little one signify? What would they bring? Oh, she was curious now. But as it stood, only time would tell what would come of this new dragon. 0.0.0. Naruto stood in front of Jaehaerys with a curious look. Can you say that again? He asked him. I need you to look at the eggs and determine which ones hold a hatchling inside, and which ones do not. The king told him, you have mentioned being able to sense these things, and with all the eggs that we have, it cannot be coincidental that many of these eggs do not hatch for us, he explained. I just need to know what egg will survive, and which ones didn't, he stated. Ah, that made sense. There were nearly 100 eggs that the Targaryens had collected within the last 50 years. And of those eggs, only about 10 of them had hatched, and only 3 of them had chosen riders. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. I can do that, that's not a big problem, he responded. If anything, it might alleviate the old mont's worries about them. Jaehaerys nodded his head. Thank you, Naruto, that means a lot. He told him, in fact, it was actually Rhaenys hers. LF who suggested that I have you take a look to be sure of which eggs would be most viable to our house, he explained to the younger man. Naruto hummed, I mean, I would have taken a look regardless, there's no issue with me doing so. He shrugged. Now, with that being said, is there anything else? He asked curiously. Jaehaerys nodded his head. There seems to be some issues building behind the scenes, he stated. A young man by the name Otto Hightower wishes to become my hand, and despite my refusal, continues to seek the position. He sighed out, rubbing the side of his head. I have no need for a new hand. And I feel as if he is planning something. Make sure that nothing nefarious is being plotted for him to get in my good graces, he said, his eyes narrowing. A young man who constantly asks for a filled spot by the crown is always plotting when denied. Naruto narrowed his eyes. That meant that this kid actually was plotting against the crown. Constantly asking to be the hand, demanding it really. And being told it wasn't possible was an immediate red flag to him. I'll look into this, keep it between us, he nodded his head. Rhaenys looked left, looked right, not a soul in sight. She smirked as she calmly walked through the halls of the Red Keep, the sounds of her steps silent as a mouse as she approached the door and slowly opened it, and there she saw her. Sarah Targaryen, the beauty of Westeros. She was renowned for her beauty, heart-shaped face, and thick and curly Targaryen silver gold hair that she had grown out long. Although she had 2 mismatched eyes, one dark blue, the other bright green, it was said that the defect only enhanced her beauty. Many claimed that she was renowned as a beauty and seductress, but the Targaryen family knew the truth she was still a maiden even at close to 30 summers of age, that no man had beaten her in a fight and that her ferocity in battle was matched by her sheer beauty. Using the magic that Naruto had taught her these past 8 months, she crawled up the wall and slowly made her way over the ceiling towards her aunt. And then, she struck. The squeal of fright didn't make it past the door. Rhaenys smirked. Hello auntie. You and I need to talk, she whispered to the elder woman. So, what are you planning to do about this kid? Kurama asked. Simple, track him, find him, and then learn what I can and see if he is a threat like the old man thinks. If he is, then I deal with the problem, if not, I simply make sure he never makes himself a problem. Naruto stated with a shrug. He already had some leads that led to the alchemists that were employed by the king, he just needed to see what they knew and if they were an issue, he'd remove them. Yes, he was technically a prince, due to him courting Rhaenys or so the old man said, but as it stood, he was truly a peasant with privilege to live in the Red Keep, which was really special in his case as he had saved the royal family's greats dragon and even helped the family in other cases requiring his abilities. Hanging out with demon advisories was just a bonus since they all got along swimmingly. The prank war was still on and he had to get equal with demon for the last prank he had tried on him. As he entered the building where the alchemists lived, he was greeted by a startling sight. Every single one of them was dead to a man. What the, he muttered in surprise. Somebody must have a reason for murdering 60 men. Kurama growled, and not a good one. Look, some of the containers of that liquid are gone, half of them are missing from the cache on the left. That side was some of the older wildfire, nearly 30 years old. Naruto said with wide eyes, the stuff could level the entire capital. He said in horror before a heat began to fill the air. Naruto barely cloaked himself in six paths chakra just as the explosion rocked the building as a last of green flames blasted into the air and filled the night with eerie emerald light from the wildfire. The blast rocked the capital, some of the dragons roaring in their pens, and Balerion roaring at the sight of the green flames that had awoken him. He read Keep was in a state of panic as the explosion was set off. At the same time, a young man smirked as he watched the explosion of green fire filled the air, burning down a portion of the flea bottom where the cesspool of decay resided. Magic had no place in this world, much less in the hands of a man who would rather use it to help a family of people who dreamt themselves as dragons. Now, there was only one issue. And that would be taken care of in due time. A taller man walked up beside him, cloaked as well and his features hidden. So, that is one issue down, two problems to solve remain. The man stated, tell me. How do you plan on removing the current hand from the picture, young Otto? The man asked as the wind rustled the cloaks of the two. Otto Hightower smirked. A simple incident. On scene. Hope you enjoyed Advent's work. As ever, reviews are the fuel that sustain me. Without them I cannot write a single word. Simple as that. Working nearly all hours of the day keep me absurdly busy, as such. I can't bring myself to write something folks don't like. On there we go. As ever, reviews keep me alive. Without them, I cannot write. So, in the immortal words of Atlas. Review. Would you kindly? Hope you enjoyed this, and may your day be filled with lots of luck. Warm regards. Ends. Previews await you below, and there's a lot, some of which we might use, some we might not. Regardless smiley face. Spoilers. Plot details ahoy. Ye be warned. What many people saw as a disability, Naruto saw a point made. The loss of his arm had done nothing to slow him down. The two unparalleled warriors clashed steel on steel, their bodies sliding past one another in the sand as they turned back to face each other, swinging their swords at the same time and locked them together for a moment. Naruto ducked under a swipe and shifted the sword in his hand and held it in a reverse grip to stop the next strike. How? I watched you burn in wildfire. The knight snarled at him. Only for Naruto to grin in response. He pushed back, and spun around as he flipped the sword in his hand back to its normal hold and once more locked blades. It takes more than a little fire to kill me. The blonde responded, and then with a surge of chakra, broke the hold they had on one another before kicking the sword out of his enemy's hand and into the air. Tossing the sword in the air, Naruto quickly performed a roundhouse that dented the steel plating while sending the knight skidding across the ground, while at the same time, Naruto caught the sword and then lashed out with a kick that struck his opponent's sword and sent it flying at him. The man raised his shield, blinking slightly surprised when the weapon shot through the steel and nearly struck him in the eye. With a grunt, he ripped it out of the puncture and growled as he charged towards the brat and bashed him in the face with his shield, causing him to stumble back a couple steps. But Naruto wasn't easily defeated. He stopped the next shield bash with a foot, and slammed the mon's protection into the ground, and pressed, embedding it deeply to the point the straps broke off. Spinning around him, Naruto smashed his elbow into his head, stunning the man as he pulled back and away. Pieces of steel cracked off his helmet and fell down onto the ground, showing just how hard the knight had been struck by the boy as he was still reeling from the hit. Naruto rotated his wrist, blocking a messy swipe with his sword, spun around and defended his back from a lunge, swiped the sword through the air and redirected the strike aimed at his chest, then locked swords. This the best you can do, boy? The knight sneered. This boy isn't even using a tenth of his true capabilities. Naruto smirked back. If I wanted, I'd turn you into a crimson smear on the ground, he responded. Then why don't you put the gold where your mouth is, brat? Alright Kurama, let's do this. You better not be out of shape now, he called out. Within his seal, Kurama was actually feeling a bit excited to show his power to this side of the world, and he responded with, "Ha. Don't be foolish, I'm always ready to go," and clasped his hands in a similar fashion as his host did. Naruto grinned as he cracked his neck. Right. and he began to unleash more chakra. The sheer potency could now be felt across the continent as Naruto allowed himself to let loose for the first time in 2 years. Naruto's clones all roared as one as the dome of chakra protecting the bystanders glowed brightly before they began to expand in size and power. Rising up into the air and curling around themselves in a fashion many realized to be a dome meant to contain something of incredible power, that being the tailed beast bomb used by Momoshiki. The citizens all had to cove their faces as the sheer power threatened to throw them away, the winds blasting them as Naruto roared in what appeared to be a dual voice, Work tilde. Before his form began to become enshrouded by the sheer output of his power, his hair waved wildly as he expelled incredible levels of raw energy that nearly tore the world around them apart like waves crashing upon the sands. Before anyone could ask what the hell was going on, a utterly terrifying roar that almost made their hair stand on end resounded through the air, causing them to look up and into the nearly transparent energy where the clearly made out the form of a massive canine of sorts, watching as it mimicked the exact motions of Naruto, and it caught the large sphere of destructive power, while at the same time the large tails closed over the top, containing any possible fallout or destruction. It made sense now why these two monsters that attacked called him Fox, as the beast itself was indeed a gigantic fox that was more mountain than animal. As the massive hands caught the dark orb, it was shoved down, the lower portion of its body digging into the ground, ripping up the remaining foundations of the battleground. As the orb slowed to a halt, the tails finished closing up at the top, and just in time as a loud explosion filled the air. I can't marry her, she's 15. Naruto panicked. Hey, I'm 16 turning 17 on the morrow, thank you very much, she rebutted him. That don't make it any better. He squawked. It's 2 years difference, what's it matter to you? She crossed her arms under her chest. I'm 19 years old, there is a very big reason. And, this is my choice, and I have chosen. You might as well give her what she wants, she won't stop till you do, another voice stated. Thank you, demon. Rhaenys smirked. That's it for today, I will stop here. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you please consider subscribe and make sure to hit that like button, share with your friends, and don't forget to check out author of this story. Details in description.